"You're nothing but a failure," Dad said at my graduation dinner. I'd paid off their mortgage for years, covered their loans, missed my own milestones to keep them afloat. Then they posted a photo gifting my sister a luxury trip. For always being the smart one, I just smiled. That night, I closed every account, pulled the deeds back into my name, and left a flash drive on the kitchen table. "Because you've never achieved anything on your own, Alex." The words hit harder than the sound of the glass slamming against the table. It shook, and the silverware rattled like it was afraid. I looked at my father, Greg Mercer, standing at the head of the table, chest puffed, eyes red from whiskey. His shirt collar was open, his face tight with pride and bitterness all tangled together. The candles on the table flickered. The smell of roast beef and burnt edges filled the air, but no one touched their plates. Mom's hand trembled as she tried to refill her wine. The glass clinked against the bottle, spilling a thin red trail down the side. "Greg," she whispered, "not tonight." "Why not tonight?" he barked. "It's his graduation dinner, isn't it? Let's talk about his achievement." Across the table, Lila, my younger sister, laughed quietly under her breath. She didn't even bother hiding it. Her golden bracelet sparkled as she brushed a curl off her face. "You wouldn't even have that degree," Dad continued, "if it weren't for me working double shifts to keep you in school." I just stared at him. Double shifts? I'd been the one wiring money every month since I was 21. Mortgage, loans, grocery bills, even the new roof he told me a friend helped pay for. But I didn't speak. I just lifted my glass, took a small sip, and let the silence make him uncomfortable. Then Mom's voice came soft and fragile. "Your sister's been accepted into that art program in Italy. Isn't that amazing?" Dad grinned as if the storm had passed. "Yeah, we're thinking of sending her there, all expenses paid. She deserves it. She's always been the smart one." I froze mid-breath. The word smart rang in my ears like a punch that never stopped echoing. Lila smiled wide. "Finally, some recognition," she said lightly. My fork slid against the plate. I smiled back, small and tired. No one noticed the tiny flash drive resting near my napkin, labeled simply, "For them." "My name's Alex Mercer, 26, software analyst, average height, average everything, except for the patience I've had to build like armor. Most people talk to fill silence. I learned to use silence to study people. It tells you who's lying, who's pretending, who's hurting. I've been the quiet one in my family all my life, not because I didn't have things to say, but because nobody wanted to listen. I paid off their debts, fixed their credit, helped them keep the house when foreclosure letters came. They called it family support. I called it survival. But what they never saw was me. The late nights working code I barely understood, the skipped meals, the missed birthdays, and the irony? Tonight, when I should have been proud of graduating, they made me feel small again. But inside, I wasn't breaking anymore. I was calculating. Because the truth they've avoided for years was sitting quietly in my hands, waiting for the right moment. Family members introduced. Dad, Greg Mercer, 56. Former print shop owner turned full-time drinker. His pride's too heavy for his wallet, and his voice is louder than his sense. Every sentence from him starts with, "When I was your age," and ends with, "You'll never understand." Mom, Diane Mercer, 53. Always apologizing for him. For everyone. She's the kind of person who calls it peacekeeping, but it's really just fear of conflict. She folds laundry during fights because pretending helps her survive them. And Lila, 23, my little sister, golden girl, social butterfly, Mom's favorite conversation topic. She's always been loved loudly. I was loved quietly, if at all. Tonight she sat across from me, wearing that soft blue dress I bought her for her art showcase. She caught me looking and smiled. "What?" she said. "Don't look at me like that, Alex. It's not my fault they love me more." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes knew what she was doing. Dad chuckled. "That's right, Lila. Confidence runs in our blood. unlike some people who can't take a joke. I kept my jaw steady. "Oh, I can take jokes," I said softly. "I've lived inside one my whole life." Lila frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before I could answer, she muttered, "Maybe you should have helped Dad more instead of pretending you're the victim." Mom gasped quietly. "Lila, that's enough." But then she said something she didn't mean to say. "Especially after that money thing." I looked up. "What money thing?" Her face drained of color. The table went dead silent, only the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the room. "What money thing?" I repeated, slower this time. Dad's fork hit the table. "Alex, don't start." Mom shifted in her seat. "Honey, it's nothing, just..." I leaned forward. "No, say it. What did the money go to?" No one answered. Lila fidgeted with her bracelet, her leg bouncing under the table. "Last year," I said, "I wired you $30,000 to clear the last of the mortgage. You told me it went to the house." Dad looked away. "It did." "Then why did I see 2 first-class tickets to Rome booked under your names?" Lila's eyes widened. You checked our emails?" "No," I said. "Mom left the tab open." Mom's voice cracked. "It wasn't supposed to be like that. You know how long Lila's wanted this? And you used my money?" Dad slammed his fist down. "Watch your tone. We're your parents." I stared back at him, calm. "And I was your provider." That line hung in the air. It was the first time I'd ever said it out loud. Lila mumbled, "You always act like we owe you. Maybe if you weren't so bitter, we'd be closer." I smiled sadly. "I think that ship sailed the day you called me a failure in front of your friends." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Voices rose, chairs shifted. Years of hidden resentment broke loose all at once. Dad's voice thundered, "You think because you have money you're better than us?" "No," I said, "because I stopped lying about who we are." Mom cried quietly. "Please, can we not ruin tonight?" I turned to her. "Mom, tonight was ruined years ago when honesty stopped being welcome here." Lila crossed her arms. "Then why didn't you say anything before?" "Because I knew how it would go," I said. "I talk, Dad yells. You roll your eyes. Mom apologizes for everyone but herself." The air was thick, choking. Then, like she couldn't help herself, Lila muttered, "Well, at least you didn't tell them about the deed." Everything froze. Mom's head snapped up. "What deed?" Lila's face went pale. I didn't mean..." I stood slowly, pulling a thin envelope from my jacket. "The house deed," I said. "The one in my name. The one I paid off when the bank threatened foreclosure." Dad's voice cracked. You did what?" I placed the papers on the table. "You can read it yourself." Mom's hand covered her mouth. "You changed ownership without telling us?" "I didn't change anything," I said. "I saved what you almost lost." The room went silent again. But this time, the silence wasn't mine. It was theirs. 2 years earlier, the apartment I lived in had no furniture, just a mattress on the floor, a flickering lamp, and a coffee mug filled with coins for bus fare. I worked 2 jobs, tech support during the day, freelance coding at night. My body ran on caffeine and anxiety. Every Friday, I'd transfer money home. Sometimes 1,000, sometimes less. Every time, Mom would text, "You're such a good son. We're so proud." I believed her, because I wanted to. The night the bank called, I remember standing in the rain outside a 24-hour store, the phone pressed to my ear. "Mr. Mercer," the voice said, "if the remaining balance isn't cleared, your parents' property will move to foreclosure." My chest felt like it caved in. I didn't even think. I just said, "I'll handle it." And I did. I drained my savings, took another contract, missed my friend's wedding, my own birthday, everything that made life feel alive. When I went home that Thanksgiving, Lila showed off her new car. "Dad said you were doing great," she said, "so you didn't need help with rent." That night, I sat in my car in their driveway for over an hour. No one noticed I hadn't come inside. I thought silence meant love, that being quiet and reliable would make them proud. But now I see. Silence only taught them I could be used without limits. And I was done being useful. Back at the table, the truth began to breathe on its own. Mom's voice cracked. Alex, you changed the title without asking us? I met her eyes. No. The bank was going to take it. Someone had to act. And Dad couldn't. Not with the debt collectors calling. Dad's eyes flared. You went through my private mail? I didn't have to, I said quietly. The bank called me because you listed my name as backup. They thought I'd know what to do. They were right. The veins on his neck tightened. That's not your business. It became my business when they said Mercer household. He stood, knocking his chair over. You think you're some kind of hero? No, I said softly. Just the cleanup crew you never thanked. Lila's voice trembled. Dad, is that true? You had more debt? He looked away. It was a mistake, okay? I was just trying to make things right. One last bet. Mom's eyes filled. Greg, Lila whispered. You knew. Mom froze. I turned slowly toward her. You knew. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought he'd stop. He promised me it was over. So you let me fix everything, I said, and never once told me the truth. The room fell into a silence that felt like grief. Lila finally whispered, I didn't know, Alex. I swear. I stared at her, the golden child, always innocent, always adored. Yes, you did, I said. You just chose not to care. It was strange. After years of keeping quiet, my calm scared them more than my anger ever could. Dad was pacing. Mom was crying. Lila was shaking but still trying to defend herself. You don't get it, Alex, she said. You make everything about money. I laughed once bitterly. Money? No. This is about loyalty, respect, truth. You're twisting things, Dad shouted. You're trying to turn this family against itself. I stood up slowly. No, Dad. I'm just holding up a mirror. He pointed a finger at me. You ungrateful. I interrupted quietly. You're right. I was ungrateful. I should have thanked you for selling my efforts like favors. The room felt heavy. The clock ticked. The smell of burnt dinner still lingered. Mom reached for my hand. Please, Alex, don't do this. We can fix it. I looked at her hand, then her eyes. I gave you my silence for years. Tonight, I'm giving you the truth. Then I pulled my phone from my pocket. One by one, I opened every joint account, every auto payment, every credit line linked to my name, and closed them. Dad's voice cracked. Alex, don't you dare. Click. Another account gone. Click. The utilities. Click. Their backup card. I slid the phone onto the table. You'll be okay, I said softly. You've got Lila. She's the smart one, remember? No one spoke. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the silence. When I grabbed my jacket, Lila's voice broke. You're really walking out like this? I turned. No, Lila, I'm walking away. She frowned. That's the same thing. I shook my head. No. Walking out means I'll come back. Walking away means I'm finally done. She didn't respond. Just stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Mom whispered through tears. You're still our son. I know, I said softly. But I don't know what that means anymore. Dad said nothing. Just sat down, staring at the floor. Pride cracked into pieces too sharp to pick up. I placed the small flash drive on the kitchen table. This has every transaction, every payment, every lie you told the bank. I kept it in case I needed proof. Mom flinched. Proof of what? That I tried, I said. And that you didn't. When I reached the door, I paused. For a second, I almost turned back. Almost. But some goodbyes don't need words, just distance. I walked into the night, leaving the lights behind. And for the first time, The air outside felt like it belonged to me. 3 weeks later, an email arrived. Subject: I'm sorry. Sender: Mom. Her message was long, messy, full of misspellings and heartbreak. I didn't see how much you were carrying. I thought you didn't mind. I thought silence meant you were strong. I was wrong. You deserved better from all of us. I read it 3 times. Then, instead of replying, I closed my laptop and stepped out onto my balcony. The city lights blinked below like slow heartbeats. I could still hear Dad's voice in my head sometimes, sharp, disappointed, echoing through years of trying too hard. But tonight, it was quieter. I'd rented a small apartment downtown. Simple furniture, a desk, a single plant that somehow refused to die. Peace wasn't loud here. It was gentle. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking, maybe they'll change. But healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means no longer bleeding when you remember. I whispered to the night. For the first time, I don't carry their weight anymore. And for once, the silence felt like freedom. Family isn't just blood, it's trust, it's honesty. It's what you build together, and what breaks you when it's gone. When love turns into obligation and giving turns into being used, that's not family anymore. That's survival. If you were in my place, would you forgive them? Or would you finally walk away too? Because walking away doesn't always mean hate. Sometimes it's the only way to love yourself again. Tell me in the comments, the voice continues softly. Have you ever carried a family that forgot you were human? Your voice matters here. Like if you've ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace. Subscribe for more stories like this, because sometimes the hardest truth is the one we whisper to ourselves.